To make our New York style cheesecake, we'll be using graham crackers and vanilla wafers with a little salt and some butter for the crust. Our filling will be made with cream cheese, eggs, sugar, flour, some sour cream, some pure vanilla extract, and we'll also zest a lemon and use the juice of the lemon. We'll be using the food processor for our crumbs for our crust and the stand mixer for our filling. Once we're ready, we're going to place our cheesecake in a springform pan. The springform pan is important because the bottom comes out, the sides detach from it, and so it makes it really easy to get the cheesecake out of the pan. To make that even easier, we are going to use parchment paper. We're going to create a circle of parchment paper to place in the bottom, and then we're going to create a ring of parchment paper eventually to go around the sides to make it easy to release the cheesecake from the sides of the pan as well. So one of the key things is getting the pan back together. We have to make sure that we get that bottom solidly inside the ring of sides so that it doesn't fall out when we put our cheesecake mixture in. To make our crust, we're going to use our food processor and we're going to crush our graham crackers first. Once we get these crushed, we are going to need to measure them to make sure we have 3/4 of a cup of graham crackers. And remember, most measuring cup sets do not come with a 3/4 cup, so we'll use a 1/2 cup and a 1/4 cup to make sure that we have enough. If you did not have a food processor to make the crumbs for the crust, you could put the graham crackers in a baggie and the vanilla wafers in a baggie, and you could crush those with a rolling pin or with a meat tenderizer. So we're just going to make sure that we have 3/4 cup of our graham cracker crumbs. We'll make sure we level those off in a dry measuring cup. We want to make sure that we don't pack them down. And again, I'm using the 1/2 cup and the 1/4 cup to make sure I get that 3/4. Then I'm going to empty the excess graham cracker crumbs out, and I'm going to pulse the vanilla wafers and do the same. Now I'm going to add the salt, stir the butter in with a fork, and then we're going to press this into the bottom of the pan so that we can bake the cheesecake crust before it bakes separately before we fill it. Our crust will bake in a preheated 375-degree oven for 15 to 18 minutes or until it's a golden brown, and then we'll need to let it cool completely before we add the filling to it. Now that our crust has baked and cooled, we're going to wrap the bottom of this pan with a couple layers of foil. You need to use heavy-duty foil for this task. And if it rips, it has to be big enough to cover the pan because pieces together will leak. We're doing this because our cheesecake cooks in a water bath. And we don't want the water to get inside of the springform pan. And our water is only going to go halfway up, but we want to protect our cheesecake really well. So you can see this side was kind of short. So I'm going to make sure that the second time, that's on the long side of the foil. So do 2 layers just kind of for insurance. Let it come up. So we also want to make sure that it doesn't hang over the pan into where our filling will be. And I just like to do this early so it doesn't get forgotten. Because once you put the filling in the pan, this is almost impossible to do. Or at the very least, it is a lot more difficult. So I want it snugged up, but not bent in. Okay, so then we're going to set this aside while we mix the filling for our cheesecake. To make the filling for our New York style cheesecake, we're going to mix it in our stand mixer, and we're going to use the paddle attachment, or sometimes referred to as the flat beater. So I've got that secured. I'm gonna put the mixer down, lock it in place, and then I'm gonna beat it on a low speed, just until my cream cheese is smooth. So I'll pause a couple of times in this process. And knock it off of the paddle attachment if I need to. So I have 4 blocks of cream cheese in here. That's 2 pounds. I did let them come to room temperature. So they were out on the counter for just a little bit, softening, warming up. They get smooth, they beat smooth a lot more easily at room temperature than they would cold. I'm just going to knock this off to make sure it gets mixed around the bowl. Beat this a little bit more by itself before we start adding ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and start adding my sugar. I need 2 cups altogether. So there's 2 cups of sugar and 3 tablespoons of flour. So I'm going to pause this a minute, scrape the sides of my bowl. Scrape across the bottom, make sure nothing's stuck there, or if anything is, we get it well incorporated into our recipe. And we're going to beat that a little bit longer. At the flour and sugar stage, we want to make sure that it gets light and fluffy before we add the lemon and the vanilla. Now that our cream cheese is smooth, I'm going to go ahead and add my lemon zest, my lemon juice, my vanilla, and my salt. So I've got my salt in with my lemon zest. And then I also want to put my vanilla in. And I'm going to measure 2 teaspoons of fresh lemon juice from the juice that I got from the lemon that I zested. So there's 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons. We're going to go ahead and mix that briefly. Well, we're just going to pause again and lift that up. We'll scrape that paddle attachment clean, just to make sure that everything is getting well incorporated into our recipe. Looking pretty good so far. Have a few lumps I see of cream cheese, so I want to beat this a little bit more. So now that my lemon zest and everything is added, I'm going to go ahead and start adding eggs one at a time. Once I see the egg is pretty well mixed in, that's when I add the next egg. And we have 6 eggs that go in this recipe. I'm going to pause this again. See how my mixture looks. Get these little pieces that were stuck at the top back down in there. Go around the sides of the bowl. Again, across the bottom. Just a little bit more on a low speed. And then the last thing we're going to add is our sour cream. And that's just half a cup. So now we're ready to pour this into our crust. Now we're going to add our filling to our springform pan. So this cheesecake needs a moist bake. We're going to put it in a water bath, which again is why we were so careful with the foil. And sometimes that's referred to, the water bath is sometimes referred to as a bain-marie. So we're going to put this in a bain-marie, and we have to do that in a very special order. When we put our cheesecake in the oven, we want to make sure we open the oven door all the way. We're going to pull the oven rack out slightly, and then we're going to put our roasting pan turned a little bit outward, and then we're going to set our foil wrapped cheesecake in the center of our roasting pan. Now that that's all set up in there, I'm going to take some water that I've already heated, and I'm going to pour it in so that it's about halfway up the springform pan. And this is our water bath or our bain-marie. Okay, once that's about halfway up, I'm finished. Then I'm going to gently turn the roaster so that it's set for air to circulate well. And then again, gently, because that water's hot, I don't want to get burnt. Push it into the oven and carefully shut the door. And then we'll bake our cheesecake at 325 degrees. Now that our cheesecake has baked in that 325 degree oven for an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, then at the end of that baking time, I simply turned the oven off, left the cheesecake in to cool down very slowly inside the oven for 45 minutes, and then it's been in the refrigerator overnight. So we're ready, it's well chilled, we're ready to take it out of the springform pan. So to do that, we unrelease the buckle. So it opened it up a little, kind of stretch it out from the cheesecake, and very gently lift. Now I did the parchment paper in here to kind of help. Gotta get that pan underneath loosened from the groove. There we go. So did that parchment paper ring. Kind of helps as you take the outer ring off. And there's our New York style cheesecake. So here's our triple chocolate cheesecake with our chocolate ganache topping ready to enjoy. So here you can see we have our two cheesecakes, New York style and triple chocolate, ready to serve and enjoy, both baked in a water bath, or also called a bain-marie, both baked in the oven at a low temperature for a long time and then cooled off in the oven. So a lot of similarities, even in ingredients, but as you recall, our process to make the filling was a little different for each. And now they're both ready to enjoy.